Hi there. Thanks for coming back or perhaps joining me for the first time. I'm Alex Pavljuk, the digital content strategist at the Montclair Art Museum. We have a lot of new artwork which come in and out of view here at MAM. Frankly, because we have such a limited space on our walls, one of our greatest assets isn't the depth of our permanent collection, which, mind you, is quite spectacular. We have a Andy Warhol, there's a George O'Keeffe, we also have an Edward Hopper. Actually, right now, there's a Charles White, which we loaned to the MoMA a few years back on view. But getting more focused, it's the rotation and emphasis on new works coming in and out that really allows MAM to shine. A lot of these works or artists that we show from exhibition to exhibition are often new to me. So you start to insert your own meaning to the pieces that you spend so much time reflecting on too, whether it's through the marketing or just like the excitement in the office, in the build up to a new show. Like I think about this one remarkable work, which was on loan to us in our previous exhibition this past year. The show was called Taking Space, Contemporary Women Artists in the Politics of Scale. The painting itself was called E. Starbuck by Hope Gangloff. I highly recommend checking it out if it's on view somewhere near you. But anyway, that work, which I didn't know anything about prior to seeing it hung on display at MAM, became my favorite work in the entire museum for a time. It just moved me and spoke to me in such an indescribable way. It was large and it felt realistic despite its bright presentation of a woman amidst a sprawling and colorful garment studio. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a portrait of a friend of Gangloff's. Regardless, I had no connection to this work personally. I didn't see myself in it, but I did see something that I resonate with. Maybe it's the subject's longing stare or the relaxed body language of the figure in a space which felt natural and comfortable. It exuded a creativity that maybe I yearn for, or perhaps wish I had, or at least had more of. I think what I'm trying to get to the root of is that I don't have an art history background, as noted very clearly in our previous episode. I came into this industry as an observer, as a museum goer, I guess you could say a fan. And I'm learning on the fly as I navigate through an industry, which is really exciting. And I think I've learned a lot, but I'm not a docent. And, despite that, I do have an appreciation and an admiration for the remarkable works that we have on display and what they mean to me. So something that comes up in conversation with my friends and patrons who may be experiencing not just MAM, but any museum for the first time is, how do I read a piece of art? Or what meaning do I make from something that I find beautiful but don't understand? I think the perfect person to talk about this with is our chief curator at the Montclair Art Museum, Gail Stavitsky. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Alex.
How's it going?
It's good. Yeah. Busy, exciting time.
Yeah, it is. It's very busy at the museum these days. So for starters, you're our chief curator, and you've done a lot of amazing work with the museum for close to 30 years, over 30 years, under 30 years?
Yeah, actually, it's technically been over 30 years, but as of May 1st, I will have been working full time at the Montclair Art Museum for 30 years.
Wow. And what was your first role within the art industry or the museum industry? What did you start doing? How did you get into curatorial?
Well, I came in kind of through the back door because I was really involved with the field of museum education. And my first job was actually training docents at the Museum of Art at Carnegie Institute in Pittsburgh. And at one point, they were very short-staffed and they called upon me to coordinate an exhibition at the museum. And I just discovered that I was actually more interested in curatorial work than education. Not that I don't still have that interest, but I felt like I wanted curating to be my primary focus. So I got switched over and became an assistant curator.
Wow. Now, how did you, I feel like everyone has their own entrance into art, whatever that may be. I never grew up an artist in the traditional sense, but I come from a family where art was definitely made a priority. My grandmother really, really made it an effort to introduce art to us as little kids. And I think it wasn't a mistake that we had prints of Monet or Degas dancers in our living room and stuff. Mm-hmm. And, even though I couldn't fully comprehend what they were or necessarily going to see the actual works, my grandmother did a really good job of being like, hey, I'm going on a trip to France. What you're looking at right here on your wall in your dining room is what I'm going to go see. And like making that, connection and that level of art history kind of important, even if it was at a minor level. And I guess my curiosity is, how did you find art?
Yeah, I think family is really important that way, even though my parents were both scientists.
Oh, wow.
But they were people who were well-read, and they took us to art museums. And growing up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, I was near the Cleveland Museum of Art, and that's a great institution. So I remember visiting there often. And also, like you, growing up with prints. I mean, I can't really say my parents were serious art collectors because they really weren't. But my mother liked Renoir, and I always remembered this print she had of a painting of a little girl holding a watering can. And she had invented this whole story about this girl that, of course, she didn't know, since the girl was, this was done in the 1870s. And she called her Eloise. And I thought that was nice that obviously she had that kind of feeling about art, even if, she certainly wasn't an expert per se. So,
yeah. Now, kind of jumping a little bit ahead, I guess my question to you in simple terms for someone who may not understand, what is a curator? What does a curator do?
A curator is someone who's really responsible for the care, the maintenance, and presentation of a permanent collection, in our case, American and Native American art. Although I guess I should also say it's not always a permanent collection, that a museum might be an institution that only does traveling or does exhibitions. But in the case of our museum, we are both organizing exhibitions based on the collection and then exhibitions from artists and other institutions that we have to arrange to make loans. And so there's a lot of planning that can go into planning an exhibition, for example, sometimes 10 years. In the case of the Cezanne and American Modernism show that I did in 2009, but sometimes it's a lot less than that. And so it's really anything to do with the art that there's that kind of responsibility.
Yeah. And speaking of the art in specific, what would you say your specialty as a curator is? Because here at MAM, we have a really unique situation where we're an American and Native American art, museum, and we specialize in those things. Now we've, in the recent years, brought on Laura, who's our incredible Native American art curator. And you've touched on, over your time here, certainly every aspect of the museum, from, our American art to our Native American art, whether it's in major or minor ways. What do you, as a curator, view as your specialty?
Well, my specialty in terms of my own education and graduate studies in art history is American modernism. So the first half of the 20th century art of the United States. But one of the great delights of working with a museum that's got a Native American collection that goes back to prehistoric, pre-contact times.
Absolutely.
Up to the present, and then an American art collection that goes from the 18th century to the present. For me, that's great because I just get to work on everything. And I actually enjoy that more than specializing, although, occasionally I would like to and get to do more focused projects. Yeah, exactly. But mostly it's just been a lot of fun to be able to do everything, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the questions that I definitely had was, we have, a very robust permanent collection, but we also have such incredible new contemporary works coming in and out, whether it's through acquisition or on loan. And I guess when you are kind of creating or curating an exhibition or a show, what is the process that goes into deciding what goes on view? Is it something that came in rather recently and you go, I need to kind of find a way to get this in? Or is it working with things that maybe haven't been on view in a long time and kind of going, I can pair this previous work with this new acquisition, so on and so forth? How do you keep what's on the walls fresh?
Well, that's a great question, because it really And for me, I should have added that one of my primary responsibilities is the growth and the development of the collection, which I also really enjoy. And very much I have the perspective of acquiring or presenting works for consideration that I feel are going to be works that we want to show, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, why would we bother? But I mean, a good example is with the show that we have up now called Family Community Belonging, Works from the Collection. That was a show where, yes, I would say Ira Wagner, our director, with whom I work very closely on any acquisitions.
Absolutely,
I mean, it's very much a collaboration. So, we were out looking at galleries and we started seeing this pattern in terms of recent acquisitions of works in the show by Natia LeMay and Larry Sultan and Karen King Choi and others, that there was this theme of people, family, community. So it just kind of, through making those acquisitions the theme of the permanent collection show, I knew that that's what it had to be, because that was the thread that seemed to be running through, not all, but many of the recent acquisitions.
How, and I think this is kind of interesting, looking at it from a curator's perspective and somebody that lives within the art so frequently. Do you go to museums outside of work? Like, are you going to check out galleries, check out new exhibitions, new shows? And do you find it more on a professional basis or personal? Like, do you get tired of kind of being surrounded by it, or is it just this deep love that you have where it transcends work and it is just at a certain point pleasure?
Yeah, I would say the personal and the professional, when it comes to art, they're so intertwined, because places that I travel to, well, of course, I'm going to go to the art museums wherever I'm traveling. And yes, a lot of my time, on weekends. Next weekend, I'm going into the city. But a lot of it is also because that's what my friends are interested in too. So I know it's an opportunity to say, let's go to the Guggenheim Museum and catch lunch together, because I have, friends in New York City that's what they do all the time.
Yeah, of course.
But, like any human being, it's not like 24 hours a day I want to be doing it. So like last night I was watching American Idol, and I'll be watching it tonight.
Yeah.
So, so I definitely have some escapes.
It's an important work-life balance.
Yeah, to try to find that. I mean, honestly, I probably have more of the work part of it going on, but I definitely try to have moments of seeing things like I saw the movie Dune 2 yesterday and loved it. But I guess I would say that I am very visual, so probably a lot of the things I do to relax are going to end up having a visual component to them.
Yeah,
so
I definitely feel the same way. In regards to museums frequently, or even just rotating through our galleries frequently, do you get excited? I feel like, and a large part of this episode specifically is trying to hone in on, for somebody who maybe hasn't spent a lot of time in museums, or maybe have never been to a museum at all, finding some comfort and some, I think, confidence in observing and looking at a piece of art for the first time. Perhaps they just don't know what to look for. And I guess my question is, how do you guide someone through the process of learning to look for the first time when it comes to, a painting or a photograph or anything really, a sculpture?
Yeah, I think depending on your perspective, say like somebody in our education department, for example, would probably talk about things like, visual literacy and looking at colors and form and exploring what the story might be in a work of art. Yeah. So to what degree someone is able to do that for themselves, probably a lot of it, honestly, I think it mostly has to do with having a very open mind, like coming to a museum and not expecting one type of art or another, not having those kind of preconceptions, but maybe just coming in and saying, all right, I'm going to just walk around and, see what appeals to me.
What catches my eye.
Whether that's, bright colors or large figures that are so well painted, or photographs, because maybe all of us can relate to photographs because we're always taking them on our cell phones. Probably just kind of seeing what you relate to. And then the great thing about a museum is that you can be engaged on different levels. Like you can either just walk around and spend, 20 seconds or whatever amount of time you want to spend looking at work. And then if you see something that you really like, there are labels there. And they're not that long, they're maybe 100 words, and you can read the label, and then the label is going to give you some guidance about what you're looking at, whether it's the story of what you're looking at, some information about the artist, or, look at the right-hand part of the painting and you'll see such and such detail. There are a lot of tools in a museum, including, of course, programs if you want to get even more in depth. But if you're just making a quick initial visit, it's not like there's some right or wrong way of looking at art.
Absolutely. I think that's the beauty of it. And I think that's what's so approachable. And I think for me, one of the points of advice that I was given when I started going to museums seriously in late high school was just go where you know. And you'll find new things. Like, if you have a path that you like, for me, when I go to the Met, I usually end up going the same direction. That's why I've never made it to the Greek stuff. Like I take a hard right and I go straight through Egyptian, and then I go into American, and then the armories and stuff. And eventually I make it into, the Impressionist work. And along that way, even though I'm hitting, the same, statues or sculptures or paintings or what have you, there's always something new that catches my eye. And even though I'm going on the same path and I'm seeing familiar works that I do have an affinity to return to, I'm still finding new things that I stop and go, oh, okay. Or as, especially working here, I start to recognize different styles or different artists, or, I make connections beyond just the visual into the personal. And I go, oh, I've never noticed that before. That's been on the wall the whole time. And you get excited about it. And, it's not just a big museum situation where you experience that. Even still recently, I had a moment where I was walking through, I came across a photograph by Gordon Parks, and I didn't even realize that his work was on view, or let alone in our permanent collection. And it was so funny because I just had one of my classes, my journalism classes, we just watched a documentary on him. And I guess I had this new kind of, I knew who he was and his work, but to have really the combed through details of his life, I was like, whoa, that's cool. That's cool to see. I didn't know that. And I stopped and I stared at it for 15 minutes because I was so entranced by it. And I think that's what's so exciting, is making those personal connections. And I guess my question is, do you find yourself returning to works that you have that connection to, or are you always, maybe not always, but I guess gravitating towards something new?
Oh, I definitely find myself returning to works because at this point, when I've been here so long, some of these works, like the Gordon Parks, for example, we've shown that work before, but it's being shown in a whole new way, a whole new context that it's never been shown before. So it feels to me, so many of those artworks in the Century exhibition feel new because there are fresh perspectives on the part of the two outside curators. So that was particularly exciting, seeing works that, like the Gordon Parks, that's something that I had a big role in choosing that photograph for the museum, and then just sort of seeing the context in which they talked about that work and thought about that work in terms of the theme of Black joy and leisure. That was something very new. And so it's exciting.
What in Ma'am's collection on view, or soon to be on view, should new museum goers be excited about or look forward to here at Ma'am?
Well, I think the big news that's the most exciting is the new presentation of the Native American art collection, because it really is going to be, I would say, cutting edge, state of the art in terms of a lot of the changes within the field of appreciation of Native American art and culture. The fact that Laura Allen is working with so many Indigenous collaborators to tell the the multiple stories in a new way that is just going to be so different from the old gallery, which of course is now was Rand Gallery, and that's been down now for a few years, and everyone's been so eagerly looking forward to being able to have the collection up on view again permanently. So I think that's probably by far the most exciting development, but then there's always so many other new things coming up too. Yeah. So this fall, September 2024 is going to be particularly exciting with the opening of the new gallery of the art of Native North America. But also we are hosting the New Jersey Arts Annual. So that will be all new work created within the past 2 years by artists who live or work in New Jersey. So those shows are always very exciting because, as you can imagine, a lot of artists and their friends are very engaged with that. And the theme of this one, I think, is so appropriate because it is a family community belonging. It's tying into the collection show. And then we have in Laurie Art Stairway a whole new show by Nanette Carter. And again, speaking of community, she's an artist who grew up in Montclair. And so the Montclair Art Museum really was her first serious exposure to art. So you could see what happens sometimes just from that early exposure and appreciation of art. She's become really incredible artist who is having what will be one of her most significant museum shows, opening in 2 parts. And in September 2024, Laurie Art Stairway, and then in the main exhibition space, Weston Gallery in February 2025. So a lot coming up.
Oh, yeah, there really is. There really is so much to look forward to. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just super jazzed about everything that we have going on here. And I know there's a lot of really fun and exciting and, important exhibitions to come. So.
Right.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate you sitting down with me for this one.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.